Welcome back. I'm Shiraz. I'm your host. Welcome to Duality 7X. Let's get right into it, guys. I want to talk a little bit about Dricus du Plessis and Kamaru Usman. You know, their upcoming bout. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. But listen, DDP's coach has got a lot to say, and he didn't hold back. Let me put it this way. He said that this upcoming match between DDP and Kamaru Usman isn't necessarily about fighting Kamaru Usman. It's about whether or not DDP has actually learned something or the right lessons because of his, I'm not going to say horrendous, but because of his one-sided loss to Khamzat Chimaev. And that in itself didn't pan too well for the DDP team, and they weren't too happy with it. So apparently they've been making some necessary calculated changes in their game and in their approach. And although they understand that Kamaru Usman's a wonderful fighter, he's impeccable, he's got a tremendous amount of talent, they don't want to underestimate him by any chance. But they feel that because DDP went 5 rounds with probably one of the best fighters in MMA, that, and especially wrestling with DDP, that they feel pretty confident going into this fight against Kamaru Usman. Now, the coach for DDP is Morne Visser. Again, he's been very vocal. He's always got a lot to say, and he believes that Kamaru Usman won't necessarily have the right kind of attitude or mental approach or even confidence to stand with DDP because of the power that DDP was able to exemplify against his bout against Khamzat Chimaev. Now, guys, I have to tell you, Kamaru Usman is not just any dude. He's not just a random B-class, C-class fighter. This guy's definitely an A-list fighter, and he can definitely exchange with the best of them. He's got power behind that punch. So if DDP and his team think that they're going to just walk into this and and thinking that they're going to steamroll over Kamaru Usman, they got another thing coming, right? That's a very bold statement by his coach. And I mean, I don't know if that's confidence, overconfidence, you tell me. But according to DDP's coach, Khamzat repeatedly chose control instead of going toe-to-toe with DDP because of the damage that DDP could potentially inflict on Chimaev. Now, he also pointed out that Chimaev rarely threatened submissions and mostly held just dominant positions. Now, that very well may be true. You could call it strategy, but I wouldn't call it a weakness on Khamzat's part. I mean, DDP definitely landed enough clean shots to visibly affect him when they were standing, and I think that was Khamzat's Achilles heel, because he's definitely a better fighter than he is a boxer, and Sean Strickland kind of exposed that in his last match. So I mean, Usman is gonna resort to wrestling because he's a great wrestler, but we don't know Kamaru's game plan. But according to DDP's coach, he thinks that Kamaru's going to come in there wanting to just wrestle, take the same kind of page out of Khamzat's blueprint, and he's going to try to do everything he can to avoid having to exchange with DDP. So I think the lesson from the Khamzat fight isn't necessarily that Dricus almost knocked him out. The lesson is that elite wrestlers don't have to necessarily finish the way you want them to finish or the way you anticipate them to fight, because they don't have to do that. If you have an elite wrestler like Khamzat Chimaev, he doesn't have to exchange. He doesn't have to, go toe-to-toe with you. If he knows he's got a specialty and he's really good at wrestling and he can take you down and he could just dominate you that way, why not? That's why it's called MMA, mixed martial arts, not boxing. So anyways, and that's exactly what Khamzat did. Now, before I continue, I want to show you this clip of Kamaru Usman, and he's talking about his the spiritual aspect to this whole fight. I mean, he said, depending on depending on how Khamzat's going to come at this, he's going to decide whether he wants to wrestle or whether he wants to exchange, right? So anyways, let's roll the clip and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Just the opportunity. I like to joke and say I'm a money weight fighter now. So hey, if it's up at welterweight, I'll do it. If it's up at middleweight, I'll do it. Shit, if it's up at light heavyweight, I might do it.
Do you see this path at middleweight is maybe easier to get to the title than it was at 170?
No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say easier. I think it just fit. It just made sense.
Wow. So that, that's some confidence, right? Definitely some confidence. Now, I'll show you some. I'm gonna go into a few more clips here that I've got of these guys. But before I do, you have to understand that in DDP's last fight against Chimaev, yes, he was the more dominant of the two. He does like dominant positions. He loves to wrestle. That's his position, guys. That's what he does. He's a wrestler. And he won position. He won control. He won those minutes. And at the end of the day, DDP and his coach can complain till the sun turns pink. But the reality is, DDP he didn't look fresh. When Khamzat had him, he was on his back for most of the time. He sucked out his power. Okay, DDP looked done. He looked like he just ran a marathon and he had nothing left in his gas tank. And that's the kind of stuff that elite fighters, elite wrestlers can do to you, is that it doesn't matter how strong, how amazing of a fighter or a puncher you are, you start wrestling, I mean, not even just being on the offensive, but being on the defensive, just even trying to hang in there, it draws a lot of power out of you. And that's the modern wrestling, modern MMA. Like it or not, that's just the way it is. Now, the real question is, can Kamaru Usman do the same thing like Khamzat did, right? This is where it's going to get interesting because he absolutely could, right? He built his championship run by forcing opponents to fight his fight. He wore and tore people down, that forward pressure, that aggression. He's known for controlling the pace. He makes elite strikers look very ordinary because they never had a chance to actually get very comfortable with him. But that said, we're talking about Kamaru Usman 5 years ago, who was an absolute beast. In today's day and age, Usman hasn't really shown the willingness to wanting to strike or exchange, partly because of maintaining that relentless wrestling pressure, over 5 rounds. And that in itself sometimes can get quite challenging, to say the least, right? So that in itself changes the entire equation. If Kamaru decides to stand for extended periods of time, then he's going to enter DDP's world. And maybe that's exactly what DDP and his coach want. But you have to, like it or not, that's how DDP survives. He thrives in chaos. Now, don't get me wrong. DDP is a well-rounded fighter. I mean, he was a champion. And champions think differently. Don't just think that he wants Kamaru or anyone for that matter to just stand up and go toe-to-toe with them in a fist fight. No, the guy can wrestle as well too. And he's pretty confident about his wrestling. In fact, I got a clip here. Let's check it out. Roll the clip.
Looked at it from a point of fighting a striker. Why? Or just a grappling guy. That's not going to help me. In the perspective of proving that I am the champion, that I'm worthy of being the champion, because I've beaten the best striker in Strickland twice. I've beaten the best striker in Adesanya. I want to face the best wrestler that I could possibly face in the division. And other than Bo Nico, who doesn't have the credentials to fight me at this moment, he still has to do a lot of work to get to that position. Usman is the best wrestler, 100%. We've seen that so many times. So that is what I want. I want to go and prove that. I mean, I'm not saying he's just going to try and wrestle me, but the fight will turn into that very quickly, and I can almost guarantee that. So the big thing for me is to go and prove what I've been working on since I was away, and that last fight, everything that was wrong is fixed now.
So some people say that DDP striking is kind of somewhat awkward. It's unpredictable. His timing is really difficult to read, and his pressure sometimes can force opponents to engage in uncomfortable exchanges, and that's the chaos that I'm talking about. DDP is a heck of a fighter, very well rounded. I think he's a great wrestler as well too. I just think he was out wrestled, outclassed by Khamzat Chimaev in his last fight, but he is pretty confident in his wrestling abilities, as you guys were able to see, and I don't think for I mean I don't think that DDP is the kind of guy who's going to be sour if this completely turns into a wrestling bout instead of a mix of, say, standing up, fighting, going toe to toe, fist to fist, slash wrestling. I don't think he's gonna. I think right now DDP just needs to focus on winning, and I think that's exactly what he's gonna do, regardless of the style, the format of the fight. We don't know what's gonna happen. We don't know how Kamaru's going to respond. We don't know how DDP is going to respond. What if DDP is the one who just wants to wrestle and Kamaru is actually wanting to stand up and fight, right? But the bottom line is Morne Visser is very, very confident, and they have to be careful that they don't want to make mistakes. I mean, they're talking as if wrestling and striking are separate choices, and I keep going back to the fact that this is mixed martial arts, and you got to bring everything to the table. That's just the way it goes, guys. There's no such thing as one or the other. You have to be good. You have to be well rounded. You don't have to be perfect in both, but you have to be able to know how to fight. And if you're not a good offensive striker, then you better be good at defense, right? And then you hopefully, if you're not a good boxer, maybe you're a better wrestler. If you're not a good wrestler and not a good boxer, then MMA is not for you. But clearly, this isn't the case about these two guys. They're some of the most elite fighters that we have in MMA. And the great thing about DDP, it's being established. We already know what he's capable of. This guy can blend both disciplines into one. If he mixes his jab, levels exchanges, if he gets into that clinch work that he's so known for doing, and then you add the whole pressure of being in the cage, I don't think DDT even needs to get into a chaotic, wild exchange with Kamaru Usman. I think he could just overwhelm Usman just by following through with those very skill sets that he's known for having and possessing. That's the strategic battle that I think a lot of his fans are waiting to see and hoping that he's going to bring to the table. Now, whether Usman wants to wrestle, the bottom line is it's all about timing. Timing is everything, right? There's another factor. There's another factor that can't be ignored, and that's the psychology aspect of things, right? Now, you got to understand, coming off such a dominant loss, not win, but a dominant loss to Khamzat Chimaev, the DDP's team is going to have to be they're going to have to project confidence publicly, and that's exactly what they're doing. But that in itself is not entirely normal either. No coach is going to admit that their fighter has some shortcomings about them, right? I mean, there's maybe perhaps some lingering questions. Maybe perhaps Khamzat exposed DDP in certain ways that we wouldn't have known unless that fight would have happened, or in this case, I think the whole world was able to see that DDP was definitely off his game. He did not, he wrestling apples to apples. He can't compete with Khamzat Chimaev. I mean, who knows what he's going to bring to the table this time around. But the one thing that I did notice in the last fight against Chimaev was his ability to strike and strike effectively well. But Khamzat, again, was able to, knowing that he wasn't such a powerful striker, He was he was really good with his defense, and he was able to make the fight the way he wanted to make that fight. You know, he was able to control the fight with the same kind of format that he was accustomed to doing. And you can't gripe and complain about that, guys. That just means that Khamzat was better prepared, and he knew his strengths, he knew his weaknesses, and he knew how to defend when those punches were coming flying. Now, if DDP's pissed about that, his coach is upset, well, boo hoo, cry me a river, then maybe you need to find another opponent that you guys are going to feel a little bit more confident in taking on. And that's not going to be Kamaru Usman, because Kamaru Usman is a bona fide, fighter. This guy can take it, he can dish it. And look, for all the fans who think that Usman is scared to strike, the narrative is already planted. Every striking exchange is going to get analyzed through that lens. So that goes for Kamaru's camp, that goes for DDP's camp. But both of these guys are going to get tested, and yeah, like they haven't been tested before. Now, I want to roll another clip for you guys, and it's Kamaru was talking about how he sparred DDP, and he remembers how that went. Let's roll the clip. You'll see what I'm talking about.
He's not the cleanest, but there's just power. I remember, I think I it's been a while, it's been a few years, but I sparred him way back in the day, and I don't remember. I always remembered. I always knew he hit hard. He swings hard, but now I feel like he's confident in that power to where if you really watch him, when he throws those big shots, both legs aren't on the ground.
Interesting stuff. Anyways, guys, look, I mean, the biggest concern for DDP shouldn't be whether Usman has the courage to strike. It's whether he can stop the transitions from happening. Kamaru is very good at switching on the fly. He knows how to operate in the cage, and Usman's the kind of guy who could consistently, force clinches. He likes to chain wrestling together. With his striking. He likes to control. He likes to control the positions. He's very dominant when it comes to that, and he could very well easily turn this from a wrestling into a kickboxing match, just like that on the fly. That's what Kamaru is known for. On the other hand, if Dricus, if he stuffs the early takedowns from the get-go and forces Usman backward with that forward relentless pressure, he could turn this fight into more open exchanges if he feels more comfortable doing so. And then all of a sudden you could see that momentum swing towards DDP like dramatically, right? And this is where I honestly feel that DDP becomes probably one of the most dangerous middleweights in the world, because that's the kind of fight that he's going to try to draw people in. But he also has to understand that this is not a boxing match. This is a mixed martial arts fight, which means if a guy knows how to take you down, you could be the best striker, the best jabber, the best puncher in the world, but it's not going to mean anything if your back is on the canvas and you don't know how to get out of that position, right? So he knows he can't afford to pull stunts on Kamaru Usman, because Kamaru Usman is too experienced for that. I expect him to strike enough to create some wrestling opportunities rather than just treating this like a pure stand-up fight. But I mean, going 5 rounds of DDP with that relentless pace and pressure, which we know DDP's got he's got great stamina. He can keep going, right? If he wanted to. That could be a little bit of a challenge that Kamaru might have to try to figure out how to contend with if that happens. So anyways, guys, my biggest takeaway here isn't whether Visser's comments are accurate. We know he has to come out publicly, portray his fighter as confident, excited, ready to go. That's the whole point of a coach. You want to maintain that with your fan base as well too. You don't want to go in there nervous, and no coach goes in there going, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what we're gonna do. We're just gonna have our fingers crossed and hope for the best." It doesn't work that way. But this is where champions like Kamaru Usman, DDP are going to come to the table, and they're going to bring what they have, and we're going to see which championship material came out stronger. So my question to you guys before we part ways here was Morne Visser's comments about how Kamaru Usman won't be able to stand with Dricus du Plessis warranted? Do you think that's an overstatement? Do you think he was just trying to say that because he truly believes in it? Or do you think Usman actually has the tools to outsmart him for over 5 rounds? Maybe he doesn't go 5 rounds. Maybe he finishes in 1 or 2 rounds, guys. But if it does go 5 rounds, both of these guys are going to have the fortitude, the stamina, the skill sets, and the mental and physical ability to be able to persevere. So yes, if you guys like this take, please smash a like and subscribe. Hit the notifications so you guys never miss a beat. Pleasure was all mine. I look forward to catching you guys in the next video.